The latest Rhino High Fidelity release, Stevie Nicks, Belladonna. Let's go. Thanks for joining. I appreciate it. You found your way over to the Modest Audiophile channel, and yep, today we're going to talk about Stevie Nicks' solo debut, Belladonna, the latest release from Rhino High Fidelity. What we'll talk about in this video is a brief introduction, but most importantly, who the heck played on this album, which is a who's who of great musicians of the time. We'll talk about the overall condition of the record itself, plus the packaging. And then we'll talk about how this thing sounds, which is most important. All right, so let's start with a brief introduction. So this record was recorded between autumn of 1980 and the spring of 1981. This was right after, I believe, Fleetwood Mac's Tusk tour took place, and Stevie finally was able to break off and do all the songs in her back catalog that she was never able to get on the Fleetwood Mac records. It was produced by Jimmy Iovine, who did a lot of the Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers records, and amongst others as well. So real quick, the musicians on this record, you've got a ton of Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers folks on here. Of course, you've got Tom, Benmont Tench, who is also the musical director of this record, Mike Campbell, and Stan Lynch. You've got a couple Eagles on this record as well, and Don Henley and Don Felder. You also got the guitarist from Elton John's band, Davy Johnstone, plays on this. Mostly plays rhythm and acoustic. You've got from the core band, you got Waddy Wachtel, who played on Keith Richards and the Expensive Winos. He's played on Warren Zevon's records. He's played on Linda Ronstadt's records. Love Waddy, and he shines on this record as well. You also have Roy Bittan playing piano, and he's from Bruce Springsteen's E Street Band. A couple others that I want to call out here is Russ Kunkel, who plays drums, and he plays on everybody's stuff, so check that name out. Bob Glaub, who plays bass guitar, another great session musician, plays on a ton of stuff. Duck Dunn from Booker T and the MGs, and a great session bass player in his own right. I think he also played on the Blues Brothers, if I'm not mistaken. All right, and Billy Payne, one of the founders of Little Feat, plays piano on one of these songs too. There's a couple more I'm missing here as well. Go check it out for yourself if you want to see who's who on this particular record. Outstanding list of musicians. Okay, let's talk about the condition of the actual record itself. So first off, it was flat. It was without scratches, no scuffing on it because it did get shipped with a poly-lined paper sleeve, just like every other record from Rhino High Fidelity, so that was great. What I will say where this one differs from a majority of, heck, all of the other Rhino High Fidelity records that I own, this one, even after several cleanings in my Humming Guru ultrasonic cleaner, I'm still getting some, not an obnoxious amount, but some surface noise in between tracks. You can hear it. And I didn't get that with any of the other maybe 8 titles that I currently own from Rhino High Fidelity. So that was a little bit different. Did not take away from the enjoyment of listening to this whatsoever, but it was there, albeit very, very, very low volumes. You did hear a little bit of surface noise, so I just wanted to call that out. Now, as far as the packaging goes and who did what on this record, let's briefly go over the OB that came with it. It's a 180-gram vinyl record cut from the original analog master tapes by Kevin Gray at Coherent Audio, pressed at Optimal Media, heavyweight gatefold jacket, talk about more of that in a second. Includes exclusive insert with liner notes from Bob Mayer, and limited edition of 5,000. So yes, out of the 5,000, I have number, for what it's worth, number 1503. All right, let's talk about the condition of this thing. This thing must be one of the most shiny album covers I have in my collection. I mean, look at that. Don't want to blind you, but it sees everything. And it also attracts fingerprints. Luckily, I will put this into an outer poly outer sleeve, and that's what I wanted to mention. Anyone who owns these records from Rhino High Fidelity, you know how tight it is to get this thing into a poly outer sleeve. This one, I don't know if they changed the dimensions at all on the on the sleeve, but it did slip in a little bit easier than any of the previous records I've gotten from Rhino High Fidelity. So that was a nice change. All right, so here's the front. Love the back picture here. And you got the inside here. Great photos. All right, well, first of all, you get the lyric sheet with some great pictures. You got the gratuitous tape box cover pictures. And you have a very nice write-up, like I mentioned earlier, from Bob Mayer. I will say that I learned quite a bit from this particular write-up in here. If you do happen to get this record, take the brief 5 minutes it takes to read it, because it was quite entertaining, and I did learn a few things, which is pretty cool about how these songs were born. So really nice. All right, let's talk about how this thing sounds. So first of all, we'll talk about the overall tone stack, right? Bass, mids, treble. First off, I'll say is this is all very well balanced. It wasn't leaning one way or the other, at least not in my listening experience in this room. Everything was well balanced. As far as what stood out the most, I'd say Stevie's vocals, and vocals in general, were very good. You had extreme clarity, I thought, on her vocals, a lot of detail. But again, it wasn't obtrusive, it wasn't too much treble, it wasn't ear fatiguing. You just got a lot of really good detail on those vocals. Again, we'll talk more about that as we get into the songs. As far as the soundstage goes, I'll say that it was pretty good. You know, average to above average in size, not in clarity, but in size. So my speakers here, these Super Lintons, are 8 feet apart, and I sit 8 feet away. The soundstage really goes to about 3, maybe 3.5 feet left or right of the speakers. The overall height of the soundstage reaches to about 3.5 feet above the tweeters and about a foot below the woofers. Not quite to my floor, not quite to the ceiling, but good. So what this soundstage maybe gives up in overall size, it adds to overall clarity within that soundstage, if that makes sense. So I recently did a review on Hart's debut from Mobile Fidelity, Dreamboat Annie. That soundstage was enormous. This one isn't quite as large, so I was really able to tell the difference listening to these records back to back a lot over the last several weeks. As far as depth goes, what I found with this record is that it did have some nice, really nice layering, but it did not necessarily project into the room. So most of the depth, if not all of the depth I was hearing, was from the front of my speakers back towards the back wall, which is about 3 feet away. I'd say the depth really lived between that 2 and 3 foot mark behind the speakers. So that's how deep some of these instruments were going inside of your mind's eye. More on that as we get into the song. So good depth. As far as the overall image goes, right, when you close your eyes and you see the performance in your mind's eye, everything was locked. There was no smearing, nothing was overpowering anything else. All the instruments, all the vocals, the backing vocals, everything were locked into their place. A very, very good image. All right, one of the things that I wanted to mention earlier, I mentioned that the producer of this record in '81 was Jimmy Iovine, if I'm pronouncing that right. I think I am. He also did a lot of the Tom Petty records at the time, right? I think Damn the Torpedoes and some of the ones around that same time frame, late, maybe 79 through 82-ish, those records there. I thought that Belladonna, this record here from Rhino High Fidelity, sounded, from a soundstage and imaging perspective, sounded more like those Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers records, as opposed to those Fleetwood Mac records, which were produced by Ken Calais and Richard Dashont. Also, not quite the same as, say, the Petty record that was done by Rick Rubin, right? The Wildflowers record. Both Wildflowers and those Fleetwood Mac records had a much more expansive soundstage, and they had clarity within the, or I shouldn't say clarity, because this record has a lot of clarity as well, but it didn't have a lot of projection into the room. So just wanted to notate that, because if you're thinking that this is going to sound a lot like those Fleetwood Mac records, it doesn't. It sounds more like a Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers record, and why shouldn't it? It was produced by the same person. Even though you get into soundstage and imaging, and that has a lot to do with the mastering engineer and all of that, I just thought that that was something I wanted to call out. All right, let's talk about some decibel level checks. I did 3 in this case. And I'll state first that overall this album I think was a little bit lower in volume than the average record that I get from Rhino High Fidelity. I thought this one just came out a little bit lower in volume, not by a lot, just by a titch, a technical term, just a little bit. All right, first song I did the decibel level check on was Stop Dragging My Heart Around. I had a low end of 69 decibels, high end of 88 for an average of 80. So, you'll see in the next couple decibel level checks as well, I'm not getting a huge difference in overall dynamics, but good nonetheless. All right, second song I did was the first song on side 2, Edge of 17. We had a low end of 69 decibels, a high end of 86 decibels for an average of 80 decibels. Again, didn't have the largest dynamic range. The last one I did was a song called How Still My Love, second or third song on side 2. And I got a larger difference in the overall decibels here with a low end of 64 decibels, high end of 87 for an average of 78. So again, generally speaking, I'm getting more dynamic range, I think, on every other one of my Rhino High Fidelity records. This one was just a little bit less so. Now we'll talk about some of the songs. So side 1 starts with the title track, Belladonna. What I put here, and this is pervasive across the entire album, strong vocals. You get excellent vocals from Stevie, who's locked in the center of the image, and you're getting a lot of detail on her vocals, a lot of clarity on her vocals. Not at the expense of low-end frequencies, it's just really well presented. As well as the harmonies I put on this song as well. Really nice harmonies came out. So that's what I'm getting out of Belladonna. Second song, Kind of Woman. Great layering in the soundstage I put on this song. You've got the acoustic guitar, rhythm guitar, being played by Davy Johnstone, right? The guitarist for Elton John's band. And then you've got Waddy is playing electric lead on this. And it's unmistakable in the soundstage and quite vivid, the layering that you're getting within that soundstage of having that acoustic rhythm behind and then Waddy's solo coming across the front of it. Really nice to hear. All right, song number 3, Stop Dragging My Heart Around. First off, it's the best I've ever heard this song, right? Heard it countless times growing up, heard it on just about on every format in every place, right? Be it the TV, MTV, hearing it in the car, hearing it on the CD players, hearing it on the boombox, whatever. I've never had the vinyl of this before and never heard it on a pretty good, modestly priced hi-fi system. So the best version I've ever heard this song. Very good depth, space, and separation I put on this. The cymbal that you hear, which is hitting that center of the cymbal, it's vivid, it's midway back in the soundstage, and it's very clear. Again, best I've ever heard of this song. Really nice, quite enjoyable. All right, song number 4 is called Think About It. Strong vocals I put. This is the song that Billy Payne, founder of Little Feat, plays piano on. So I thought that was pretty cool. So that's Think About It. Last song on side 1 is called After the Glitter Fades. 2 things I want to call out on here is the pedal steel and the piano, both of which are in space, which is not necessarily the rule for this album, but I wanted to call it out when I do hear it. And they were very well set in the image and in space, meaning you close your eyes and with your mind's eye you can see those instruments just hanging out in space. All right, side 2 starts with Edge of 17. And just like I said with Stop Dragging My Heart Around, this is the best version I've ever heard Edge of 17. And a couple things were a little bit different. And it starts off with, for me anyway, the hi-hat coming in on the left-hand side of the soundstage in the intro is much more pronounced than I've ever recalled hearing it before. Really cool, very clear, and again, hangs out in space within that image. And then you got the piano enters on the midway back on the center / right of the soundstage. That is cool. Really good depth on this song. Great detailed vocals. Stevie is, you can hear the strain in her voice. You can hear every minute detail of Stevie's vocals. She's awesome presentation of Stevie on this record in particular. The next song I put a star next to because I wasn't very familiar with it, but I really like it. And I like the way it presented itself on this album. And that's called How Still My Love. Stevie Nicks is center, locked. And she's got space around her, and this song kind of builds around her within the presentation of this song. Really cool. A couple other things I stated, again, detailed vocals, very good image, really good depth as well from the front of the speakers towards the back wall, and nice piano notes on the right side that do hang out in space. I really enjoyed this song, How Still My Love, probably one of my favorite tracks on the album. Song number 3, Leather and Lace, another song we all know and heard many, many times. A couple things I wanted to note on this one. The intro, Benmont playing that organ, it's in space. It's really nice, and you're getting some really sweet, vivid highs coming off of that organ as well. That was cool. Right when the intro of the guitar comes in as well, the acoustic guitar. Sounds really good, I put. And Don Henley, great vocalist. I'll just say it. His vocals on this song were so sweet. Really good vocals. I've never heard it like that. Just like Stevie's vocals and the backup singers on this, all the vocals on this cut of this album they're really, really good. And again, I've never heard Don Henley's vocals sound so pure as I did on this song. Really good. All right, song number 4 is called Outside the Rain. And really what I wanted to share with you on this one is it does sound very similar to a Tom Petty's and the Heartbreaker record as opposed to a Fleetwood Mac record and how it presented itself within the soundstage. And why wouldn't it? Jimmy Iovine is the producer of both the Heartbreakers and this record. And you've got about 3/4 of the Heartbreakers playing on this song. So it's pretty much Stevie Nicks with the Heartbreakers. Let me tell you who played on it. So you've got Stan Lynch, right, playing drums. Guitars are Tom Petty and Mike Campbell. The organ, Benmont Tench. Yeah, you got percussion Phil Jones, who's played with the Heartbreakers, so he's played on this one. And the one-off is Ton Moncrief, who played bass. So very much a Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers type of portrayal within the soundstage. Now on to the last song of this album called The Highwaymen. I put a star next to this one as well because it wasn't one that I was overly familiar with, and I came away really liking this song. Why wouldn't I? When I tell you who played on this song, wow. So what you've got first, I'll tell you who played on it before how it sounded, okay? So what you got is you've got two Eagles, you've got several Heartbreakers, you got a little bit of Elton John personnel on here, and Stevie Nicks. Here you go. Acoustic guitar, Davy Johnstone, right? He's the guy from Elton John's band. You've got Don Henley playing drums and backing vocals on this song. Guitar, you've got an Eagle and a Heartbreaker. Don Felder and Mike Campbell playing dual lead guitars, or dual electric guitars. And organ is being played by Benmont Tench. So again, and the bass on this is Richard Bowden. I just thought that that was one heck of a band to be playing for Stevie Nicks. Man, what a band. All right, now how did it sound? Full bass I put for this song, really nice. Built, another one that was built around Stevie's vocals. Stevie's locked in that center image and the rest of the band just kind of flows in around her. Really nice, a lot of nice space in the soundstage between instruments and vocalist. Very nice image on this song as well. All right, so what are my final thoughts on Rhino High Fidelity's release of Belladonna? First off, I'll say this. I've started and stopped this segment of the video about a dozen times because I just can't get through it. What do you mean, Mark? Well, look, I'm a big fan of Stevie Nicks, big fan of Fleetwood Mac, I'm a big fan of Tom Petty, big fan of Jimmy Iovine, big fan of Rhino High Fidelity. They should all work. All right, maybe I can say it this way. So let's start with Rhino High Fidelity. Big fan. I've gotten 4 Doors titles this year. I've gotten the Paranoid by Black Sabbath. I've got The Faces Ooh La La. I've got Cars Candio. I've got the Cars debut on order. I'll be getting that later on in July, I think. So I'm a big fan. This sounds a bit different than all of those records, meaning that it doesn't project into the room. It doesn't have quite the same 3-dimensional holographic vision in your mind's eye that all those records have. So that's different. This record, and it might just be mine, but this record has a little bit of surface noise where none of the other ones did from Rhino High Fidelity. Not to be obtrusive and not make me enjoy the record, because once the music starts I can't hear anything other than the music. The surface noise is very, very, very low volume and you can only hear it in between the songs. But it's there and I call it out. It's different than the rest of the releases that I've gotten from this label. As far as soundstage and imaging go, if you're a Fleetwood Mac fan and you're expecting, to hear that soundstage that you got from Rumors or that you got from their self-titled album in '75, you don't get that same sense with this record. Those records projected the soundstage into the room. This one is from the speakers back towards the back wall, so it's different. Is it an overly expansive soundstage? No, it's not. It's average. It's, like I stated earlier, it's 3 feet either side. It's a good soundstage. It's just not a huge soundstage. It sounds more like a Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers record that Jimmy produced, and why wouldn't it, right? I guess. I'm not a mastering engineer or anything like that, but I'm guessing that is a similarity. It's a common denominator. So, all right, I've rambled on enough. What do I think of this? I think if you are a Stevie Nicks fan, big-time Stevie Nicks fan, you're going to love this record. It sounds better than anything I've ever heard from this album before. So for $39.99, you get an exceptionally good package. You're getting a really good-sounding record. If you are a Fleetwood Mac fan and somewhat of a Stevie solo, you may want to double think it because it's not going to sound the way you think it is. I don't know, I'm trying not to be derogatory one way or the other here, but that's my thoughts on it. So for $39.99, if you're a super fan, go out and get it. You will be pleased. If you're not, then think of going out and trying to find a used copy in really good condition. All right, so that's it, everybody. I hope I haven't confused you too much, but most importantly, do yourself a favor. Schedule some time for you because you deserve it. Be it at the end of the day, at the end of the week, during the weekend, whenever it's most convenient, schedule some time aside for yourself in your listening room. Get your favorite beverage. Put something on. Maybe it's this. Maybe what you want to do is go and stream this thing first if you're not sold on whether or not this is going to be worth it for you. Go and stream this album. Kick back with your favorite beverage and go, wow, I remember these songs. Oh, I don't remember that one. That sounds really good. And make the decision for yourself. If you really love it, I think you'll be able to go find a copy of this, order it, and have it arrive for your next listening experience. All right? That's all I wanted to say today. Take care of yourselves, and I look forward to the next time we get together, all right? Bye now.